Hey everyone, this is an unanticipated live, but basically I am just going to share the Twitter Spaces hosted by Brian Entin and has special guest Jennifer Coffindaffer and see what they have to say. And then on the next live, we'll recap their thoughts and also my previous live. So here it is.
Hey everybody, it's Brian. I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. Hopefully this is working correctly. I haven't done the spaces in a while. Thank you guys for all logging on. I'm sure more people will come. I know it's only a couple minutes after 4. People are also busy this weekend after Thanksgiving, so thanks for getting on. There's obviously a ton of interest in the Idaho college students murdered. I've been reading about it, following it as closely as I can for the last couple of weeks. I wanted to get out there sooner, but I had some family commitments and stuff that came up. And I just come off of a month traveling for work. So unfortunately, I'm not able to go out there until tomorrow. Finally, tomorrow, I'm going to travel to Idaho. News Nation has had other reporters on the story. There's been a ton of other media out there, a lot of really good reporting that's been going on. And I've been trying to stay on top of most of it. But I'm happy that we're finally able, my team is finally able to go out tomorrow, just because it'll be 2 weeks since it happened. And all of us who cover these cases know that, after a couple of weeks, sometimes, people start to lose interest, and it's just good to keep the pressure on, keep visibility on something like this, let the world know that there's still a lot of interest and that everyone is watching, just to kind of keep the tips coming in. And, police already seem obviously really, really passionate about solving it, but also I just think it's important to keep it in the news. So we're going to be going out to Idaho tomorrow, and I just wanted to do the spaces to sort of talk with everyone, kind of to go over the latest that we know. There's obviously a lot of information we don't know, and also just get information from you guys. I mean, I want you guys to talk, and we'll hear from Jennifer Coffindaffer and producer Paige, who I work with at News Nation, who's been on this since the beginning. Again, News Nation has had people out there, just not me. And just, I'm going to be taking notes throughout, just for us to look into when we go out there. Obviously, our main focus is just covering the story. Like I said, keeping visibility on what happened, and keeping it in the news, because I think that's really important. I mean, we're not police, obviously, and that's not our role. But there are obviously things that we can look into, and we know from other cases that we've covered, a lot of times information that comes to the media ends up helping law enforcement and all the people on Twitter and online. I mean, we know from other cases have had a big impact in solving other cases. So everybody sort of has an important role. Jennifer and Paige, are you guys there?
Yes. Hey, how are you guys?
That's Paige. Hey, Jennifer.
Doing great. How you doing, Brian? Hi, Paige.
How was your Thanksgiving, Jennifer?
Oh, it's always great when the family's all together. How about yours?
It was good. It was good. It was good, ate a lot, just it's nice to be with the family and everything. How was yours, Paige?
It was really good. I got to come to my hometown, spend some time with family. The only difference from you guys is I had about 40-degree weather. instead of some nice summer sunshine, as we would call it up here.
Yeah, that's true. Jennifer and I are both in Florida, so we're a little spoiled in that department.
We are spoiled, especially growing up where it was freezing cold, and now I'm warm every day. It's kind of nice.
Did you make I remember last year you made like all those pies, Jennifer.
Yes. So this year, 2 pumpkins by request, but my younger son wanted brownie a la mode. So I made double fudge brownies with chocolate chips also. So they were just gooey and
that sounds amazing.
So that was fun, and apple pie, and then I have a cheesecake coming up, but it's my surprise.
Oh, that's like a weekend after Thanksgiving event, the cheesecake?
Well, I'm doing that Sunday as a special surprise. So it's got 5 things of Philly cheese in it, 8 eggs. It takes me about 5 hours to make. It's ridiculous, but it's so good.
Well, I'm glad we're doing the spaces today, so you'll have time.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's jump into it.
Yes.
I'll start with you, Jennifer, and we've got a ton of questions, and I'm going to go back through the thread from yesterday when I first posted about this and try to get a bunch of questions in. But I guess the first question I have, Jennifer, is we're almost 2 weeks out now. There's not a lot of official information from police. Do you think they know a lot more than they're letting on, or do you get the feeling that this is really almost like a cold case at this point?
I think, Brian, they have a lot of information and they have so much more to go through. I saw on there somebody asked for a percentage of what was probably returned, and I think it's a very low percentage, both in terms of subpoena returns. I think the laboratory information is extremely small in terms of returns forensically. I think the forensic analysis of telephones and the cell tower information, all of that is probably really almost at its infancy, even though it's going to have an emergency request on them. It just takes time. So I think that sadly, because it's not someone in the inner circle, that's the reason why this is taking so long to get a suspect named.
And Jennifer, we just got the new information from police this morning. They're talking now more than 260 digital media submissions. They say 113 pieces of physical evidence that they've collected and sent to the Idaho State Police Crime Lab. That 113, someone asked me that on Twitter today. That number for that type of a scene, is that big? Is that small? Is that what you expect?
I would expect something in line with that, because you're looking at really, I don't want to say four crime scenes. It's such a huge crime scene. You have the bedrooms, maybe only 2, maybe 3 in play. You have the area where the person would have entered. You have that general space. You have the stairwell. Trace evidence can be left anywhere in those formats. And then you have everything outside, how he entered. Was he in that brush area? I posted something on Twitter where I saw agents that appeared to be looking to see what their vantage point would be from the woods. And then I saw another agent on the very peripheral running. And I was wondering if possibly they're timing something and looking at vantage points. So there is so much evidence that could be strewn for quite a large area. So no, I'm not surprised, Paige.
And you mentioned someone getting in. I mean, I heard one of the family members say that there was a code on the front door, and then we've heard from police that there was no forced entry. I mean, what do you think that means? Is it someone? I mean, you mentioned you don't think it's someone on the inner circle, but it seems like it would be someone who knew how to get in without, breaking a window or something.
I think it's going to be somebody comfortable that maybe has even been in their house before at one of these parties. I think to have this brazen of a move to go into that house. But I believe they probably entered through the sliding glass door, which is on the second story, which was apparently oftentimes left open. And it makes most sense that that is how the person entered.
When they talk about the people who were in the house, the other roommates being, I don't know if they used the word cleared, but basically saying, that they're not the focus of the investigation right now. Um, I was wondering, like, is when law enforcement says that, can that sometimes be like a tactic, like they are secretly still, possibly a suspect, or does that really mean they don't think that they were involved in terms of like the other roommates?
In this case, I believe law enforcement is absolutely clearing these individuals. I think that they want people to focus in terms of the public's help on this, not to be focused on individuals that they've cleared and they don't feel are responsible. And those are usually cleared this quickly by concrete alibi.
Interesting. Okay, so you think it's legit when they say that?
I really do. I don't think the police are playing games at this point. They are seeking the public's help with not only camera footage, ring camera, but also remember somebody who did this would have returned to where they reside. Um, Probably very bloodied, very disheveled, very tired. Somebody who is capable of this probably has lost their temper in the past. I think it's somebody that was at least in the community during this time frame. Maybe because it's break right now, they're out of this community. But there are people that are going to be in and around their inner circle that probably would have seen signs of this person being capable of this.
And Brian, to Jennifer's point a little bit too, police keep emphasizing over and over again that window of time, that 3 a.m. to 6 a.m., where they want to see surveillance video and images. And you and I were talking about this on the phone earlier, but what's really interesting to me is they keep saying it's super important for what we see in that video, but also what we don't see, what's missing from there. Maybe it's a break in a routine or a pattern or something like that that will catch their attention.
So, like, even if you have video from that time that you don't think shows anything, what are they saying? It could still be useful.
Yeah, they're saying even if there's no movement in this video, even if you say to yourself, I don't see anything, they still want you to send it to them because they say what they don't see could actually be very telling of certain things they're looking at as well.
Interesting. I guess that makes sense, huh, Jennifer?
Yeah, I think it's different things like uh, things that might be out of place that to somebody that just had a ring camera and doesn't see anything obvious, but to police, there might be something obvious in that video. Um, Let me just give you an example, and this is just hypothetical. I'm not saying this occurred, but say the individual actually dropped something, something they ate, a glove, anything like that. They might not even notice that in that ring video that comes up as a speck, across the street, but then it becomes noticeable because remember, they didn't just show up. There has to be an egress point and a point that they entered this whole scene. And it has just boggles me that we don't have any camera footage yet, or at least that that's not become public. So maybe they're holding that close to the vest.
I wonder too, with it being a small town, and we've heard the police say in some of the press conferences that stuff like this doesn't happen there, that people let their guards down because it's such a quiet town. Like I found covering stories in the past when you go to towns like that, they don't have all the video cameras everywhere. Because like I live in Miami, and like everybody has a Ring camera. If something happens, you're going to find video. But in some of these towns, that might not be the case.
I think that is a very legitimate point. Growing up in a small farm town myself, when I go back, everybody's door is still open. My parents don't lock their doors. No one does. It's very trusting. They don't have a ring camera. So I think you make a very, very valid point.
Yeah, that might be part of the reason or maybe they do have the video and some video and they just haven't told us. A lot of the comments are about the 911 call page. So we know that there's a 911 call, but they've adamantly not released it, right?
Right. We've got no 911 call. It's better off talking about what we actually know about the 911 call. So we haven't heard it yet. We don't have a transcript yet. We know that it came around just before noon on the 13th, and it came from a cell phone belonging to one of the surviving roommates. And police have over and over again not release the name of who made the 911 call. But most recently, in one of their more recent press conferences and then follow-up releases that they share after that, they said the call, once again, belonged to the roommate's phone. Multiple people talked to the dispatcher, but there were other people at the house on the time the 911 call was made. Police say the roommates called friends over because they thought that there were people passed out on the second floor and that they weren't waking up. So that kind of explains the call for the unconscious person. We know police arrived shortly after that to what they found.
So what do you make, Jennifer, of them? I mean, to me, it doesn't seem unusual that they're not releasing the call, because when we've covered other cases and it's like a really active investigation, they can hold that back from making public. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I think they've held it back very purposefully. I think that it discloses the people that were involved in making that call. I don't think they want their names out there. They don't want them contacted. They are key. They're going to be key in this case in terms of witnesses, maybe obviously not to the crime, but to the aftermath of the crime. I think the reason that we're seeing unconscious person, which, if you walked into a situation like that, it would seemingly be quite a bloodbath and not just an unconscious person. But, and I don't know this to be true, but if their doors were locked and they were banging on those doors and getting no response or door, that could very possibly be why. I've also seen a rumor, and I have not seen it substantiated, that someone looked in there and then walked out and collapsed, and that was the person they were reporting. I don't really think that makes much sense, just to debunk that rumor, although I always say if there's some truth to that, please come forward and let us know the source of those remarks.
Well, a lot of the comments from people, and I get it, it's hard to visualize 4 people being stabbed, separately at different times, assuming it's the same one killer, and and no one in the house waking up, or they're not being like screaming. But at the same time, I mean, if everybody's, I don't know if you've been drinking and you're like in a deep sleep or passed out, or I mean, who knows what the situation was like. But I get why people are saying it's just weird that that no one would have heard anything or woken up.
Well, for those that might even be on this spaces, and certainly for those in the public who have been viciously attacked, even if they were awake, if they were surprised, and I can speak from experience on this, it happens in milliseconds. They're on you, they're attacking you, and certainly somebody with a knife, one plunge to your lung area, to your larynx, and there's no screaming. It happens so quickly. There's really no chance for a response, especially with somebody who's possibly inebriated and sound asleep.
That's a great point.
Yeah, that is. Another big thing, I mean, and there's so little official information to even go on at this point, because there's not a lot that they've released. But in the beginning page, I guess since the beginning they've said this, I think they've been using the word targeted.
Yes, since the very beginning. So, this story came to be, and for those of you who follow the news closely, right around the time, exactly, the same day as those 3 University of Virginia football players were shot. So a lot of attention was on that story. We hear 4 people murdered, 4 students in Idaho. Police say it's targeted. They tell the public, you're not in danger. This is a targeted attack. We're investigating. And it is only until a couple days later when they have this pretty bombshell press conference where they say, hey, actually, we do think that the public should be on alert. There could be some cause for concern. Now
they kind of walked it back.
They kind of walked it back a little bit. Yeah. And so they have maintained the entire time that it is targeted. Most recently, Wednesday, the chief, when we followed up on that, exactly why, they point to evidence. They won't say what that is. And then they say, you're just going to have to trust us at this point in the game.
But how much of that do you think is them having to balance out keeping people calm. You have a university in your town, school's supposed to be back in session. I mean, you can't have the whole world or the whole town in a panic. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
like they want to be honest, but at the same time, like,
yeah, we've
they don't
talked
want
to
people to be
parents who are
in
like,
hysteria.
yeah, we've talked to parents who are like, I called my kid up and I said, you're coming home for Thanksgiving early. I mean,
Yeah.
this is the first murder in this town in I think they said 7 years. It's pretty much spooked everybody there. So I think you're right. It's something delicate to balance.
Yeah, and there's been a couple of parents that DM'd me and said that they weren't going to let their kids go back to school because school starts again on Monday. The university put out a statement saying that they will make it an option for every class, whether you want to go back in person or you can continue online if you don't feel safe. And I saw there were even some professors that have said, I'm not even offering the in-person option right now. I don't think it's appropriate given that there's a killer on the run. Jennifer, what do you make of this whole? A lot of it seems like semantics, but the fact that they're using the word targeted.
I believe that police believe truly was targeted. In other words, there was an individual, and I think it's just one, specifically targeted in this instance. Although I do agree that there is a balancing act, so you don't have panic on your hands. But I think they have strong evidence because they have not wavered from that. And my belief is I mean, I hate to even say it, but I'm just speaking from other circumstances. I think it's going to be a possible real mutilation, decapitation of the individual that was targeted compared to others that were really just in their way, and that they got through to get to their true target. I'm so sorry to mention things like that on here, but I just think that that's what we're looking at.
Well, and so it's interesting on the press releases that they send out are very detailed, but there's not a lot of new information. But I mean, they're very, again, so whoever is in charge of their press kind of knows what they're doing in the way that they're putting these releases together and they even have a section that says rumor control. So every time they put out a release, there's a whole little part where it says rumor control and they address some of the rumors. And I'm trying to find it now. Online reports of the victims being tied and gagged are not accurate. Okay, so it didn't say anything about mutilation not being accurate. They were just very clear about the tied and gagged, because that became a rumor at one point. They say the tied and gagged is not accurate.
Yeah, and that was just the start of a number of series of rumors here. I'm going to read some of them off. In addition, Brian, the report of the dog that was skinned a few months back, just about 3 miles from the home. Police say they've ruled that out. That's not connected. You guys may have heard it was brought up in the most recent press conference. A 2021 double stabbing in Salem, Oregon, showed some similarities. They say that's not. Their evidence doesn't suggest that's connected, nor a 1999 Pullman, Washington stabbing. They say that's not connected. The one interesting one, they haven't gone as far as completely blocked it out, but the idea of one of the victims, Kaylee, having a stalker, they say they've heard a lot about that, brought up in terms of tips, but no evidence yet. But they said that doesn't mean they're going to stop looking at that idea.
And just when I put on my reporter hat for these kinds of stories, like in my mind, I'm always trying to think about what the police are thinking behind the scenes. Like, there's reasons that they release certain things and reasons they don't. Just like when we're reporting, there are certain times where, like, if we might find out something and find out the police, and that hasn't happened in this case, obviously, but other times it has, where we found out something that the police are really close to solving something, and they will ask us to hold back that information. Give us 24 hours. You'll totally compromise the investigation if you report this now. And usually if they're that close, we don't want to compromise the investigation, so we won't report it. But anyway, what I'm thinking about is, like, with the rumor control and with the choice of what they're releasing and not releasing, it's just interesting to think about how much they might know, and not that they would be trying to mislead us or the public, but but their main mission is not keeping us informed right now. Their main mission is finding the killer. So there could just be a lot going on behind the scenes. And we know from covering this and talking to investigators after the fact with other cases that, oftentimes the media people are not kept in the loop with the sensitive information. A lot of times the detectives talking to the family members are not kept in the loop with the sensitive information, again, as a way to sort of protect the core of the investigation. So I don't know, like everything I read, I'm trying to think about what could actually be going on.
Yeah, and then going back to kind of what we do know or what they've been transparent about from the beginning is the murder weapon, right? It started as like a sharp-edged object, and very quickly they said, we're looking for a knife. We're not looking for any sort of knife. We're looking for a big knife, a fixed blade knife. We've been reaching out to all these stores in the area that might sell them. Jennifer, this is more for you, but we spoke with Tracy Walder. She's a former FBI agent and CIA friend of News Nation. On the show earlier this week, she said she's not that concerned about the weapon, about finding the weapon. She says there's a lot more valuable stuff out there. I'm curious your take.
I disagree with her. That weapon is so important. As I said, I think previously, making other comments, if they find that weapon, they are going to find so much information on that weapon. They're going to be able to trace back the location where that weapon was found and go backwards to find the individual that may have used it. I think it's a crucial piece of the evidence. It's also once they figure out a subject, that's going to help link that subject. It is very difficult to make cases often when we don't have the murder weapon, whether that's a gun or where in this case is it a fixed blade knife. I also think the knife is going to help solve the crime from the standpoint of the individual who committed this crime, I believe, is comfortable with knives. I believe they chose that knife as their weapon for a reason. It's very personal. It's the way the knife just enters the body, what's involved after, is all very vicious. And I think that is going to help find the killer.
It's so brutal. I mean, I don't want to get, too gross and graphic, but you're right. I mean, I think that's why this case is so disturbing to so many people and why parents are afraid to send their kids back on Monday and all of that is because, I mean, it's not just one young person stabbed, but to think about the fact that 4 people and that this person, assuming it's one person, had to go through the house and do that. Something else that I wanted to ask you about, Jennifer, is a lot of people are asking, why is there not a reward? Like, why are they not announcing some kind of big reward? They announced that the governor in Idaho was giving $1 million additional dollars to help with the investigation. But does it mean anything that they're not offering a reward? Like, could that mean that they know who it is?
I don't believe they know who it is. I say that because if they did know, I think that they would want to let the public know because of all the concern and, the way this is going with people believing the police aren't doing, a good enough job. Here it is, 2 weeks. And the reward situation is interesting. Of course, getting $1 million, they're not concerned about that. Plus, all the individuals that are contributing in terms of these other law enforcement agencies. But of course, where a reward comes in very importantly in these cases is sometimes people will come forward with a reward. So I am surprised. I don't know why nobody's taking the lead on that to offer or to collect and to offer a very substantial reward. I find it surprising, but I think it's going to change. I think we'll see a reward in the future.
I just hope it doesn't. I mean, obviously, like everyone, I hope that there's not a huge future in terms of it remaining unsolved. I mean, because you know how it is that the longer it goes on, they always say like the first 48 hours is the most important, and now, we're almost 2 weeks out. I would hate to be covering this in a year and still having these conversations.
And you feel for the families, right? Who are
Yeah.
obviously trying to process something unimaginable, but then not having the full picture as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and again, I've seen some frustration from them in some interviews that they've done about, you know, a lack of information and that kind of thing. But it's just, again, it seems like it's such a fine line, um, you know, a tightrope almost, like the police are on, because it seems like they don't even tell the families what they know at a phase like this, right,
Yeah, I
Jennifer?
think Jennifer could probably speak more to that as well, but it's kind of this like this line you're trying to balance of the we're all thinking about like finding out who did this and finding answers, but law enforcement is thinking about building and executing and prosecuting a case.
Yeah, and the prosecution piece of this is huge, and they're protecting that from stage one moving forward. I mean, to release any particular details about that crime scene or exactly what happened can completely whitewash once they actually get a subject and are building from that. So they just can't. It would just totally upend the integrity of this case for them to release a lot of details.
And I feel for the families and friends too, because when something like this happens, and again, from having covered other stories, you know, as amazing as the internet sleuths are, um, it's at the same time like people dig up information on everyone, and a lot of, you know, most of the people aren't involved at all, and then people come up with theories, and you know, I just feel for the people that um get, you know, kind of squashed in the middle of this, that had nothing to do with it, and suddenly, you know, they become suspects in the eyes of people on the internet. It's just, you know, I don't know, that always makes me feel bad too.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Jack D, you know, we have three Jacks, but if you look at Jack D, the ex-boyfriend, he was being completely maligned on all social media forums. And I know I sent out two tweets just hoping people would get the word out. He is not the subject, and and in fact been cleared. And law enforcement said that very early on, you know, within days, one of their early on press conferences. And it's so interesting because it only takes a few people to get that and to breed that. And it
Right.
just, and I feel terrible for the poor kid.
Yeah. At the same time, though, I mean, a lot of people are DMing me, and usually I'll just tell people to send it to the police too. But you know, it's the internet sleuths that take the time to go back through old posts and find people who liked those posts, and then go look at those people and see, oh, this person like has bloody photos from, you know, a crazy movie, and then it like I don't know that there's enough people within the police department to be doing that 24/7, and a lot of times those little pieces of information actually do help.
Well, you think about in the Gabby Petito case, the video that spotted the van, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
the things.
100%. Yeah, if it wasn't for those people just going back and looking at their dash cam, that's pretty much what, you know, brought that whole case together. So I think, you know, you just hope most people do it responsibly, because again, I always just feel bad for the people that get thrown under the bus that really have nothing to do with it, you know?
Well, you know, Brian, I'm a huge sleuth fan.
Yeah,
From the
me too.
standpoint, you know, they it's amazing the time they take. Most of them are, you know, very well educated. They have terrific jobs, and what they do on the side is they sleuth, and they're very good at it. And they find a lot of great details and things that are helpful. I know I get DM'd so often on cases all over the country, and when I see one that's a nugget, I mean, I'll call directly, you know, that agent on that case. If the bureau's involved, and if it's a local, I'll call them just to say, listen, please take a look at this. And I'll, you know, send it to them via text, because, you know, it could be something that gets caught in the tip line and isn't looked at for a long period of time. Right.
Yeah,
So,
no, totally. And yeah, it's, you know, everyone is sort of the eyes and ears, right? I mean, like I said, there's not enough police officers to catch everything.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
Paige, can you go through, or maybe Jennifer, but Paige, if you happen to know it off the top of your head, like the video that we know exists, that because the police, have they released some video?
No, so basically the one video we have is that Twitch video from the food truck. I think it's called the Grub Truck. And that was the video that Kaylee's sister is actually credited with tracking down and finding and giving
Yeah.
to police. That's where Kaylee and Madison were. They put the timestamp police. This is now according to police at around 1:40 in the morning as a last stop potentially before they were driven home by a private party who's also been not considered someone they're looking into in this investigation. As far as that, police are mainly focused on this grid that they've repeatedly shared, and it's that area specifically within Moscow. It's obviously hard to show you guys because we can't physically show you guys here, so I recommend going to their website. But it's a grid that they pinpointed a specific area from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. And that's where they want everything they can find in terms of surveillance.
What have you made of that video, Jennifer?
Well, when I looked at that video, and I've looked at it several times just to look at the key people in there, right? So we started with a lot of people being concerned about the hooded man, right?
Yeah.
And
a lot of people are talking about the hooded man.
a lot of people, the hoodie guy, but the hoodie guy has been identified and has been cleared by law enforcement. So the hoodie guy is now out. There are, you can tell these girls, they are having a great time. They just left the bar. They're getting their food. They called the Uber. It's such a typical college, scene and vibe. There were a few things that were a little odd, in terms of there's a lot of hugs going around. I did notice one individual that seemed kind of ignored in the video that I'm kind of just looking into, kind of just looking. I mean, I'm sure law enforcement has already identified him. The sleuths have identified him and, just kind of looking. But I have no doubt law enforcement is looking at that video and identifying each and every person in there, just like they need to do with the Sigma Chi house, where Ethan and Xana were, because that's a big space of time we're missing.
Yeah. And what about the bar? I mean, wasn't there could be surveillance cameras where, other places they were?
Oh, I think law enforcement has those and is pouring over those to see if there's anything unusual, because something that night or possibly the day before, but ignited the anger in this person, the ire in this person to act that night and do this, heinous crime.
Yeah, and if we have anybody, sorry, Brian.
I
just want to go to the grid thing. If we have anybody on the spaces who is from Moscow or familiar with the area, the question I've had regarding to the grid that I've been talking about is what kind of area is that? Brian, like when you get out there tomorrow, that's one of the things that I'm interested in driving around. Is this grid they're looking for? And they've identified at these streets, are there bars there? Is it residential? What type of area is this is what I'm really curious to know. So I'm going to throw it out to the group for that.
Yeah. If anyone is in Moscow, I guess raise your hand or put in a request and I can unmute you. Again, I'm not the greatest with spaces. One other question that just came in, Jennifer, is, and a lot of people keep using the, phrase serial killer. Could it be a serial killer, or since they're saying targeted, does that sort of rule that out?
Could who be? I'm sorry.
Could we be dealing? Oh no, you're fine. Could we be dealing with a serial killer?
Okay, I don't believe so, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to trust law enforcement on this. I just don't think that if they had truly identified the markings of a serial killer, meaning a complete randomness.
Did we lose Jennifer? Are you there, Paige?
Did we lose her? I'm here. Did we lose her?
Hold on. Let's see if she comes back. Jennifer and her She has cell phone issues sometimes. Meanwhile, my mom keeps like blowing up my phone during this. It's like, Mom.
Is she saying anything nice?
No, I don't even think she knows we're having the spaces. She's more worried about my sick dog.
Yeah.
Jennifer, hello? Are you there? We'll give Jennifer a second to come back.
Well, Brian, I'm going to start asking you questions now. How about that in the meantime?
Okay.
After reading about this and hearing from people, you and I have obviously been talking about this ourselves for a while. What are you most interested in when you get out there?
I mean, you know how I am. Like once I get into it, like I can't help it. I just get like crazy obsessed, and I know that's gonna happen once I get out there. Like once, like boots on the ground kind of thing. I mean, I'm just interested in digging up anything that other reporters haven't found yet. I mean, it would again without impeding the investigation. I mean, obviously, you want people to talk to the police first, but anything that we can help. Bring to light. I mean, it'd be interesting to talk to the roommates. Obviously, getting the victims' stories out there again, talking to their family members. I mean, that's really what it's all about.
Yeah.
I'm also interested in school starting again. How that's going to work with a killer on the run and these brutal killings. Like, I mean, I understand why parents would be scared. That makes sense to me.
Right. I think for me too, I'm such like a visual, and I didn't know what Moscow, Idaho was before this, so like I want to know more about the neighborhoods and the areas that they would go out to and the routes they would go. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. And I think I'm also just surprised that it still hasn't been solved. I mean, that like 2 weeks out, something this horrific with it's gotten so much attention too. I guess and again maybe behind the scenes there's more progress than we know of, but I think I'm just surprised that that I'm going out tomorrow 2 weeks out and that there's still so little information officially.
Right, totally. I mean, what was the most recent update of the sheer amount of manpower from the FBI in addition to all law enforcement? I mean, they're in the hundreds.
Yeah, Moscow police. I'm trying to look at the latest. It looks like they have 4 detectives, 24 patrol officers, and 5 support staff. And then they've got the support of the FBI, 22 investigators in Moscow. So they've got 22 people there, 20 assigned agents throughout the U.S., 2 behavior analysis unit investigators, which is obviously important if they're trying to like profile who this person is. And then the Idaho State Police is obviously playing a big part. 20 investigators in Moscow. They've got the public information officer. It seems like they're handling the media a lot. And then they've got a forensic services and mobile crime scene team. 15 uniformed troopers. Also, we've heard that there's going to be a ton of uniformed police officers there starting on Monday just to make like the community and the students especially feel safe, which makes sense.
Right.
Hold on, I'm trying to see if where is she? Hold on. Jennifer, let's see if she's back. I'm going to text her. Hold on. She's let's see.
There she is.
Oh,
Jennifer, are you back?
Hey, I
Jennifer, are you back?
apologize. Brian, I can't remember the last time I did a space. I think it was with you and Marky. This is why I seem to have technical difficulties. You had asked me about whether I thought this was a serial killing. Did that come across? Simply put,
No, that's when you cut out and I mean, the reason I asked is because that's one of the top things that people are asking on Twitter. So I wanted to see what you think about it.
Yeah, I don't, and I'm going to tell you why. It's the trust that I have in law enforcement that they believe this is targeted for a very specific reason. We don't know. There could have even been a note left. There could be different indications that they know from the media they've looked at already, that there was a specific threat. So they are so adamant about it. I think that is the situation we're looking at. I also looked closely at 2 other murders that took place One was in, and I'm going to butcher this, Washoe, Washington, and another one in Oregon. That a lot of people were trying to make a nexus with, and I couldn't find it. One looked to me to be a burglary with a masked person. They were over 5 hours away. One involved, the victim was a Sandra Ladd, an individual. She was found at 4:30 on June 14th, not on June 13th. So I couldn't find a nexus with those. I just think no is my answer.
Okay. And just so you know, a few people have messaged me because I've said it wrong a couple times. I guess the locals pronounce it Moscow, not Moscow.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah,
Moscow.
I've seen that, Moscow. Mm-hmm.
I think we've all just got like Russia on the mind too. So
Wanted to address the dog, Brian. You and I and Paige. I don't know if you're a dog lover. Brian and I are huge dog lovers.
Yes, I am.
yeah, so there's the dog. Yeah, the dog was apparently there. It was wasn't it it was Kaylee's dog?
Haley's dog with Jack. They were co-owners.
Yeah. And apparently, so this was on the this wasn't in the rumor control, but Paige, tell us what we know. Basically, I mean, I think the short end of it was the dog was there during the brutal.
Yeah, unharmed and at the residence, according to police. Which then it went with animal control, and then it went back with a owner who would care for him. I believe Jack may have the dog at this point.
Yeah, I saw a photo. Another outlet had a photo of Jack.
And it's raised a lot more. Jennifer did a great job pointing out, how fast this all happens. But that's been a lot of the questions on a lot of people's minds is that, like, for those of us who have dogs or have had dogs, and I know I used to have a golden retriever, and someone came a step from that door and that golden retriever would go nuts. A lot of people are wondering, did the dog bark? If not, why not? Raising that sort of question as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I've got 3 dogs. Only one of them is a barker. The other 2 like literally never bark. I mean, so maybe the dog might just not be a barker. But it is an interesting question. I mean, I think it just goes back to the whole question of, how did this happen with other people in the house? What do you think, Jennifer?
I think that there has been a lot made about the dog, but to your point, it could not be a barker, A. B, the other, the roommates were all in their rooms, locked in. They'd been out all night long, up into the wee hours of the morning. So likely very fast asleep. By all accounts, they had consumed some alcohol, which causes people to sleep even deeper. And then a lot of times, I don't know about you, but I'll hear my dog bark in the middle of the night for a short amount of time, and then they stop barking. I don't really think that much of it,
Right.
if it's a quick bark. So I think there is a lot made out of it, and I'm not sure how much is really there to be made out of it. This was not, by the way, a Rottweiler or a German Shepherd. It was a sweet little, it looks like a little golden doodle or something.
Well, Mama Bear 129 on Twitter just asked in reference to this, which is kind of first I thought it was a weird question, but then I'm like, no, it makes sense. Did the forensics test the dog? We know that dogs get into everything. Might have picked up DNA. Actually, someone else is asking that now too. It sounds morbid, but did the dog have blood on him? I mean, it's kind of I'm just thinking again about my dogs. Like, they would have jumped on the bed or come to investigate me if I had just,
Yeah, it's not clear at all where that dog was, other than at the house. Was it in Kaylee's room? Was it,
right?
Did Kaylee sleep with Maddie? I'm still not convinced that Kaylee was in her separate room. They haven't disclosed that. We know Kaylee had a room. We know she was really just back to visit and show off her new car that she had just bought. So that even that's confusing. You're in bed, it's late at night, you're calling your ex-boyfriend multiple times, and it's possible they were just in there jabbering and fell asleep, and that it was really just 2 locations we're talking about. We
Yeah,
don't know, but it's a
right.
possibility.
Yeah, like you said, the dog could have been kept out in a different area or something. Someone asked me this. I don't know much about this. Maybe Paige or Jennifer, or maybe you know what this is. Um, I'd like someone to speak about geofence warrants. I believe they may have played a huge role. Do you know what a geofence warrant is?
Jennifer, I'm going to let you take that one.
Yeah, I don't even know what that is.
I mean, it could be a different vernacular than I'm used to, but I'm wondering, are they referring to, and maybe you can text them back or message them
Okay.
back, if they're referring to the warrants pertaining to any and all cell phone usage that occurred between those hours in that location.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
and they have done that, a warrant for any and all, you know, cell phone pings from all phones in that location. And I think that is going to yield hopefully some answers.
So Vern Gilbert, who's a helped us before with cases, sent targeted attack, stalker, it thinks it's personal, brutal, knife. Could it be jealous, vindictive? Killer may have already left the area. Will they return after the holiday break? Killer may talk about the targeted individual at some point in a jealous manner. Again, I go back to this school being back Monday. And there was even one family member I saw say something to the effect of like, this killer could go, there's this vigil happening this week. Like Jennifer, what is your take on whether people should be worried to go back to school? I mean, you don't want to just like stop your life because something like this happened, but at the same time, do you think it's a legit concern?
I have 2 college age children, and I wouldn't want them back. I would be insistent that they take their classes here, not because I think that there's a serial killer on the loose. It's because I think that there's a killer on the loose, someone who is capable of this sort of rage and targeted vendetta. What happens when somebody else angers them to this point? So
Yeah.
from that point, so yeah, I think you could possibly go back to quite a ghost town there, Brian, because it doesn't make really any sense to be on that campus in this situation until they find this guy.
Someone asked, what do you think about the skin dog slaughtering just days prior and only down the road? That's actually addressed by the police as one of the rumors. They say that detectives are aware of a report of a skinned dog, but do not believe there's any evidence to support it is related in this incident. But then they say contact the sheriff's office for further details. So they're clearly trying to squash some of the rumors, but at the same time, you do have to wonder like how they're able to so quickly squash some of these rumors. Like, how do they know that all of this stuff isn't connected?
Well, with that dog situation, which I thought was about 2 weeks prior, but it doesn't matter. Nevertheless, there was definitely some sort of animal mutilation, and the sheriff's office handled that case. And they have, I believe, found out who did it, and they know the circumstances and they know the situation, and that's why they've determined it's not related. Remember, they have officers working round the clock, weekends, nights, in that command post, having run these command posts. It's amazing. People don't even want to leave when their shift is over. They become so invested and they're ready for the next lead that they're going to go out and clear. And so I'm not surprised with the onslaught of manpower that they're able to resolve some of these.
Sorry, I'm just reading through some comments here.
No, that's okay. I'll ask Jennifer a question while you do that, Brian. A lot of attention is going to be on this vigil that's coming up this week. And if this continues to remain unsolved, we know police are likely profiling this killer. Jennifer, I know you've been doing a little bit of that yourself with your experience, but what do you think the chances are that whoever's out there goes to this vigil this week?
I think it's possible. People who commit these types of crimes, they really want to be kept sort of in the know. I mean, this is somebody that's going to be tracking and looking at what law enforcement is doing. They're watching it as close as the cyber sleuths on here. And, all of us have been watching it and looking and reading. And so it would not surprise me.
And we hear the
Remember,
term
they're not going to have.
profile. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say they are not going to have remorse.
Right.
Unless they get caught. Then they're more remorseful. They got caught, but then you might see some sort of feigned remorse. But they think this person deserved it.
Right. We hear the term, profile of a killer. They're profiling a killer all the time. But for those of us without, FBI experience, can you walk through exactly what that looks like and how you do that?
Yes. So I am not I want to make it clear. I'm not a certified profiler. That wasn't what I did. I'm an agent investigator,
Right.
we're in homicide investigations and drugs and cartels and things like that. But in my cases as the case agent, I often would reach out to BAU and work hand in hand with a profiler. I'll give you one quick example, right? So it was right after 9/11, and we had somebody that was stalking the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, people, airplanes, tugs, writing Osama bin Laden is the best, down with the US, I hate America, literally writing it on cockpit windows, on tugs, so they had access to the inner, what we call the airport operations area of an airport, right? So I took all of those sayings. I had absolutely no leads. I could not figure out who this was. I sent everything they had written and how they wrote it. They stamped it. I sent everything to the behavioral science unit. They came back and they said, you are looking for a male. He's going to be Caucasian. He's going to be between the ages of 40 and 50. He's going to have a blue collar job. He's going to work in and around that airport. He's going to be former military. He's going to have children who are probably in the military. They pinned it down perfectly. So here I'm thinking I'm looking for a whole different ballgame. And they give you a beautiful report. And then you work with them as you're working the case. You say, okay, well, I found out this. And then they plug that into their analysis. And I've had 3 cases specifically where I needed a profiler, and all 3 times they were perfectly on point.
Wow. Well, that's interesting. Well, hopefully they'll be on it this time too,
Yeah, and the police have that. They were there, I think, within day 1. 2 agents from BAU, our behavioral analysis unit from Quantico. And I believe that I got mine returned within maybe 24 hours, 48 hours. They do it very quickly because they see this all the time. They see these different cases. And so I think the police have a very clear outline of the type of all those details I just gave, according to BAU.
Another interesting question that I just got: has forensics been able to isolate the killer's DNA? How have the suspects been ruled out thus far? Has it been via DNA, alibi, or something else? Do you think
Sorry, Brian.
No, go ahead.
Because of the quickness of it all, it has to be alibi. The DNA is going to take some time. I mean, and there could be other, blood and obviously there's going to be hair, there's going to be fibers, there's going to be so much there, and they need to figure out what's even relevant. But with blood, mostly it's going to be victim blood. And all we can hope for, which often happens in these types of killings, is that they accidentally stab themselves with a knife, just brush themselves or prick themselves enough to cause blood to mingle. And then you have, it's not that it can't be done, it's very difficult to distinguish the DNA markers at the lab. And I could tell you DNA, it takes a long time. It just does, even with the rush that this is going to have on it.
Some people, this is kind of a weird take on it, but someone is telling me they feel the vigil is to bring people back to campus for crowd footage. That doesn't seem right, though, right? I mean, I think we've seen the university talk about the vigil. They want to remember the vigil. I mean, that wouldn't be some kind of tactic by law enforcement, would it?
I don't think it's a tactic, but I think they're going to use it. I think there'll be agents there. I think there'll be BAU, behavioral analysis unit agents there watching. And I think all of that will be happening, but I don't think it's a ploy by them.
So you think they'll have like undercover people at the vigil?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
That's what you need to focus on, Brian.
Yeah, we'll be there. So
yeah.
I didn't even think about that. I mean, I obviously knew that. I mean, it just made sense to me that they would have a vigil for the sake of, bringing the community together. But I mean, I can't remember what case it was. It was an old one, and you mentioned it earlier, Jennifer, there have been situations where a killer will come back to a vigil to watch the emotion, or I've heard stories of, serial arsonists who then, like to come and watch as the fire department arrives. I guess it wouldn't be out of the question that whoever did this would be kind of lurking around.
Well, it's different than a serial killer. A serial killer has more demonic and right? This would be somebody, I think, more trying to blend in so they don't call attention to themselves. Someone who is trying to find out anything they can hear about rumors, who they think it might be. That wouldn't be why a serial killer would be there for more of a joyful piece of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just sick to even think about, regardless whether
Sick.
it's a killer, Anything else you think is important, Jennifer, that we haven't covered? I mean, it's hard. I mean, I hate to speculate so much, but there is just so little information right now that's being released. It's hard not to sort of, talk about potential theories, just because there's so much possibility still about what could have actually happened.
Well, I think the main thing is, when the coroner came out in this case, and it did remind me a little bit of in the Gabby Petito case, where the coroner came out quite early and made some statements that were, of course, ended up being quite remarkable. But this coroner said some very important things. And when I first listened to the coroner say about the knife, and they said, well, I think they asked something about, is there more than one weapon or something like that? And she very quickly says, oh, this was the same knife, but then she kind of holds back. Those weren't her exact words, but she just says, well, it would have been the same style knife. Right then I knew most likely we have one killer because you have one knife. So you'll have to listen to that, Brian, but she realizes she catches herself, because that's a clue I'm sure they didn't necessarily want out. But I think that's why law enforcement refers to him as being a guy and one.
And this was from the coroner. This was from the coroner who said that.
Yeah, the coroner. If you listen, I think they gave two interviews, and it's in the first one, I believe, where they say that. But there's some clues to be gained by that. Also, that that they were sleeping, which is totally explains what is sort of unexplainable otherwise, right? How could people sleep through all this? Well, you can sleep through it all when everybody's asleep and they're ambushed and they have no chance to fight.
Yeah, Brian, that's what the coroner said to Ashley Banfield last week.
That they were sleeping? I knew they were sleeping, but that came up in the coroner interview.
They were sleeping, and then when Ashley followed up and said, in beds, were they found in beds? The answer was yes. Now, I know there's a lot of questions about, were they in individual beds and where in the house, and different sorts of things, and we don't know the answer to that. But when Ashley asked if they were found in beds, the coroner did say yes.
What about the knife? And I'll wrap it up soon. I know everybody doesn't have a ton of time, but they've been sort of generic about the description of the knife, right? I mean, it's not like we haven't seen a picture of it or anything. Well, they don't have the knife, so I guess they wouldn't have a picture. But do they just know based on the wounds? Is that how they're coming up with this basic description?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, exactly so. This is a fixed edge, meaning it's not, or a fixed blade. This is not a pocket knife. This is not a butter knife. This is not a steak knife. This is a fixed blade knife. And we haven't seen exactly what it looks like, but I can tell you this: law enforcement has a rendition of what they believe that knife looks like, because they're able to conclude that from the wounds.
Just based on pictures from the autopsy and that sort of thing.
Yes, they're going to see how how large the area is where that knife goes in, the length of the laceration,
Yeah.
the depth of the lacerations, and they're going to be able to tell a lot about that knife.
Anything else in closing, Paige, you think that we should cover?
I think you guys have done a really good job hitting the main facts here. I think it's just, police are missing something, right? That's why they're continuing to ask for information. No piece is too big, or too small, or too irrelevant. I think they're getting close, but I think they need something to complete the puzzle. So I think just keeping the word out about, I sound like a broken record, but that grid, that area that they're looking for, where they're asking you to send anything that they have, I think they think what's in that area is going to be able to crack this.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that, because you texted me that earlier too, that you think, just based on you covering this from the beginning, that that you think they're getting close. I don't know why. I don't want to be cynical, but just based on everything I've read, I don't necessarily get that. I don't not get that feeling, but I don't strongly get that feeling. What do you? I mean, do you think that, Jennifer?
I don't think they're close. I think that the biggest reason why they're not close is this crime scene that they're trying to make their way through is just huge. And I think the amount of tips is overwhelming. And I think the witnesses and the information, the digital information from all these phones and, computers, and I just shudder to think about it, actually, because I know how hard it is and how much manpower and how many hours. And so, like I said, because I think it's not an inner circle person, it's somebody more on the peripheral. That's why they haven't been able to hone in, because they're going to start with the people closest and work their way out. And they're already getting outside.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna. I mean, I hope that this is the week, and that I just, as you mentioned earlier, both Jennifer and Paige, I always think of the families first and the victims, and that's what it's really about. And so, for a lot of us, it's just a mystery and a case that we get interested in, but for them, it's their family members. So I hope that for their sake, there's some kind of resolution this week. And I look forward to going tomorrow. I know that there's a ton of theories, and people go down rabbit holes, and we really try at News Nation, and me, I just try to be fact based. And I know that sometimes maybe that's not as entertaining, but that's just the way we do it. And we're just going to stick to the facts. And one other thing, like, people will message me theories or things that they found interesting or that they found online, and like, we do look into all of that, or we send it to police, or we just because we don't include that in reports doesn't mean that we haven't seen it or that I haven't seen it. It's just like we're really just focused on what we know for sure. So
And that's what I was going to say, Brian. Like, for me, my closing message would be just that, is that, even as we talked about this, we're not talking about, casting a theory on who did this. We're just talking about what the evidence that we have right now gleans, we can glean from it. But it's all about the facts. And I just think it's terrible. I agree with you when people cast aspersions on people being involved in something this heinous. The police will get there. I do believe that, Brian. I do believe they'll solve this. And I just think it is so unhelpful to guesswork at who did this horrible crime without fact.
People on social media have a lot of power. I mean, it's not like the old days where, just if something was on the news, it became public. I mean, when people on social media, bully one person or think that they're involved and they actually aren't, it can really, do a lot of damage. Again, I always feel for those people. But we'll just have to wait and see how all of this turns out. And again, I'll be on the road tomorrow, and we'll start our reports on News Nation on Monday. It'll be interesting with school starting again. We'll be at the vigil and just trying to dig up anything we can during the week, of course, while being respectful of law enforcement. So thank you, Jennifer and Paige. I'm really appreciative of you both, for coming on today, and also just personally for being my friends and always there for me and helping out with these stories and stuff. So thank you guys.
Absolutely. This was my Spaces debut.
I
couldn't believe I got the invite. I couldn't believe I got the invite to join.
I mean, have you ever even heard Paige's voice, Jennifer? I mean, she's always
I don't
lurking
think anyone
behind the
here.
scenes.
Oh, Jennifer hears my voice because I'm always in her ear saying, "Hi, Jennifer," from the control room.
Yeah, so I've heard Paige's voice. But
yeah,
Paige,
she gave
it's
me a
nice
hard time.
to...
I was like, I'm going to do a Spaces with Jennifer. I'm like, can you do it too? Because she's like obsessed with the case and always talking about every little detail. And she's like, you want me to do it? I'm like, duh, like, everything about it,
I am always silently working behind the scenes.
So anyway, all right. Well, we'll try to do another one of these soon. And everybody have a good rest of the weekend. And we'll talk soon. Thank you,
Jennifer,
everybody.
let's get you on News Nation this week, okay?
Okay, thanks, Paige, and thanks everybody on Twitter for all these wonderful questions and everything. Thanks a lot.
We love everybody. Thank you guys. Sorry I wasn't able to let people talk. It just became overwhelming. I need
Okay. So thank you for joining me. And I want to go over this and recap this side by side with my reading, uninterrupted between the two, and kind of recap on both. And then also look forward to seeing Brian Entin show up there. And I look forward to seeing you all on the next live. Thank you for joining me, looking into this. And if you have not caught my last live regarding the Idaho 4, please look into that, because that was strictly on profiling the killer and also off of my cold reading before I start looking into the facts and information. Thank you, allegedly. Thank you for everybody coming in, and I hope you all have a beautiful and blessed night. Much love, y'all. Bye.